This is the first topic and the first ever video of JIT programming. So the topic which we had chosen and decided to do is Docker containers and VM, which is basically quite famous these days. And the reason is that you will come to know in subsequent videos. What are Dockers, containers, and VMs? There are a lot of confusing words out there, and people tend to confuse. And that's the reason I just wanted to make videos on this before going for the practical session. So stay tuned for the subsequent videos and have the hands-on experience on the Docker and containers. So before I jump into the what Docker and containers are, before that we need to know what VMs are. So the virtual machine basically is nothing but you have a host machine, and then you can create a multiple virtual machines on top of that, and you can do you can do the deployment and you run your services, and that's it. Then why do we need Dockers and containers, right? So basically, the Docker and containers can be used in place of VMs, and the reasons are quite a lot. The virtual machines, when we talk about what we do is we have some sort of host OS operating system like a Windows in your laptop or Mac, right? And then what you do is you install some hypervisor software like VMware virtual machines or your Oracle virtual machines, right? Or Citrix, they have some sort of hypervisor tools as well, right? So you install that hypervisor, and then using that you create different number of different types and different numbers of virtual machines on your local system as well, right? The problem with that is it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resources. Even though you're not using it, it dedicates some sort of files there. They have their operating system files and other things. The Dockers, what is basically is, it's a lightweight operating system. Basically, it's not an operating system. It's basically a set of libraries, which acts as a virtual machine itself. So to give the analogy, what I can say is, suppose if you have worked on multi-threaded applications, right, in Java, you have two things. One is process and one is thread. So a process basically have a lot of resources. They have a lot of processing unit and data associated with it. But a thread is lightweight process, and you can spin a lot of threads and do the work parallelly, right? And it takes very less time to initiate and create a thread and manage their life cycle. But a program or a process takes a lot of resources, and it takes time to start and stop, right? So similar analogy can be applied here as well. So virtual machines, you can have an analogy like process, and containers are like threads. So it's basically, if you think about a Docker is nothing but it's an orchestration tool. Orchestration tool means it manages your threads or manages your containers, right? And what you can do is you can create a Docker image just like you create a jar or WAR file, and using the Docker orchestration tool, you can run the Docker image, and which is basically called the containers. So containers are the running instance of a Docker image. Just like you have a jar and you run it, it becomes a Java process. Similarly, you have a Docker image and then you run it, it becomes the containers, right? So in order to use the Docker, what you need to use is you need to install the Docker orchestration tool in your local. Well, I'll provide the link at the end of the video, and then you can proceed, right? You can just go through this. So this is basically nothing but a Docker is orchestration tool, which enables you to run the Docker image and manage its lifecycle and the container and the virtual machine. So if I try to go into the more detail, this is the main difference. If you want to understand in more details, the leftmost diagram, what it shows is you have the server. Server is nothing but basically your machine or some remote machine. You have one operating system. Basically, you have some Linux machine, or in your local it has a Windows. Then you install a hypervisor. You install a virtual machine hypervisor for VMware or Oracle VM, and then you create different guest operating systems. So guest operating systems are like Ubuntu or Windows or any kind of operating system you want to create. Suppose you want to create a 3 guest OS, you have to have a 3 operating system unit there, files, associated files, libraries and everything, and then you can run the app on top of it. But the rightmost diagram, what you are saying is, you have the server, you have the host, and then you install a Docker engine. That's nothing but the Docker orchestration tool. And you don't have to have the files and RAM or the memory associated to each and every container. So Docker engine uses their host operating system, their kernel, their RAM, their processes, everything. You don't have to have a separate. And what you do is you have the Docker image ready there, and you can run as many as containers you want. Suppose you have 5 applications to run in 5 different machines. You can create 5 containers and it will run as it is. Don't worry if you haven't got the much clarity. Maybe once we do the practical sessions, we'll get more clarity on this. So this is the basic nutshell difference. So virtual machines are very slow and it takes a lot of time to boot. The containers are very fast and it boots quickly as it uses the host operating system and shares the relevant libraries. The containers do not waste or block any host resources, unlike the virtual machines, because the virtual machines takes the RAM and memory from there. And they also have the isolated libraries and binaries specific to the applications they are running. And the containers are handled by the orchestration tools like Docker or Apache Mesos Marathon and so on. And virtual machines are managed by the hypervisor, right? So there are few Docker orchestrations available on the market. What we will be using is the Docker. So we will be installing the Docker in our local system, and then we will use it in further series. There are Kubernetes, Mesos Marathon, Docker Swarm, Amazon Web Service. They have ECS and EC2 orchestration tools. So why Docker is so famous? The reason I wanted to just show this diagram and created this diagram just to show you the reason behind that. So these days, the microservices is quite a a frequent topic which people generally pick up and they try to use it in their application. So with the microservices, what has happened is you have a different services running at different places, and they communicate with each other. They provide the services to UI or the client. So you have a mobile or desktop. You try to hit a URL which connects to your UI, and then UI services connect to different CAS services, tenant management. You have the billing and sales. Is gather all the information and sent back to you, right? So you can run the CAS service container or the CAS service in one container, tenant in one container, billing in one container, sales in one container. All these you can host it on a single host machine. You don't have to create a virtual machines. You just have one host operating system, and you can just run all the container at one place. And not only that, you have the flexibility to scale up and scale down. You have the flexibility to have the high availability as well. And there are a lot of other benefits which we'll talk in the subsequent videos. This is the place where you can download. For Mac, you can just refer this link, and for the Windows, you can refer the bottom link. And also I'll provide the links to download these Dockers. So before moving on to the next video, please download this and install it. It's quite easy. I'll just show you the place. So just you download this, and then you just run a command, Docker version. If you are in Mac or Linux machine, it will show these details once you install this. In case you are using the Windows, just refer this link, Windows link. Once you install it, you will see in the search, you will have the something like Docker for Windows, and then you open the PowerShell. Remember, open the PowerShell and just do the Docker version. You will see the Docker version there as well. Once you have installed in this, we'll start the next videos.